So he brought in this chicken sandwich, which I start biting into, and he says, listen, we've been thinking, why don't we give you 10,000 now and another 40,000 to finish the project in a week?
Brilliant.
So I start crying, choking on this blinking sandwich. He's having to do the Heimlich manoeuvre on me. But it's just phenomenal.
Welcome, everybody. This is Simon Gilbo with Inspired, and I'm really excited this week to have an old friend, Steve Legg, to join us. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Simon. How are you?
Brilliant. Yeah, looking forward to this. So for those of you who don't know, Inspired, if you're new, it aims to be upbeat, uplifting. I introduce us to a whole range of mates from all sorts of different walks of life, and its aim is to celebrate dogged perseverance, gritty overcoming, costly faith, and Steve's got loads of that in the mix, and there's so much crappy news out there and drudgery and despair, and we want to counteract that completely. So, Steve, that's the aim.
Love it.
Are you up for that?
Totally, mate. Count me in.
Right. Well, take it away. So, tell me about your childhood.
Okay, so I come from Bournemouth originally, beautiful town on the south coast, 7 miles of beautiful sandy beach. I had a younger brother, David, and went to Kingsley School in Bournemouth, one of the toughest schools in the town. I got involved with the school band, which sounds very rock and roll until I tell you it was the brass band. I played E-flat bass, this big tuba thing. Thoroughly enjoyed school, and then one day when I was about 12, I saw a poster up, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And it was for the Boys Brigade round the corner from my home down in Bournemouth. And I thought, well, that looks interesting. So I was thinking about the Scouts and all that sort of stuff. But the Boys Brigade, it was round the corner. It was very handy. But the only snag, we had to go to church every Sunday. And I wasn't very keen because no one in my family were Christians. But on the plus side, we could play football every Saturday. And I heard there was a girls' brigade. So I thought, I'm happy to put up with that.
Yeah.
So I went along to the Boys Brigade and we had a wonderful time. We did drill and first aid and all this sort of stuff. And I had to go along to this church, which I've got to say, Simon, was really boring. And it really put a lot of us off. And to be really honest with you, I felt sorry for God having to be there. I mean, omnipresence has its drawbacks sometimes, doesn't it? But we went on a summer camp and there was a vicar there who believed in God. And not only believed in God, but communicated in such an incredible way about the love of God and how Jesus came to this earth 2,000 years ago, born in a shed, grew up to be a man who turned the whole world upside down, was crucified and came back to life again. So we could be friends with him. And I got thinking, well, this is either the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard, or it's true. And if it's true, I need to do something about it. And we were given this wonderful little booklet called Journey into Life. And I must have read that about 25 times. And I determined that when I got home, I would pray that prayer in there. Because I figured I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. If it was a fairy story like Postman Pat or Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, you know, I'd risk nothing. But if this was true, if Jesus was the Son of God and he wanted to be friends with me and forgive me, then I had everything to gain. So we got home. After an amazing week, we'd all got sunstroke. It was back in the day, you know, we didn't worry about the sun, did we? We'd had a wonderful week in South Devon, and I dumped a suitcase in the kitchen, and I ran up to my room and got down on my knees, and I can see myself doing it, reading this prayer from Journey into Life, saying, God, if you're there, come in and change me. I'm really sorry for all those things I've done, said, and thought that were wrong. I believe that Jesus was the Son of God and he died so I could be friends with you. Please come into my life and change me. And it was such a simple prayer, but I knew God had met with me. And the little booklet said, please tell someone within 24 hours of your decision to follow Jesus. So I went downstairs and told my dad, who clipped me around the ear and swore at me, you know, what have you done a stupid beep, beep, beep thing like that for? But I knew from that moment, life was never going to be the same again.
Beautiful. So how old were you then?
I was 12 or 13 years old, but I discovered something that I thought, this is so mind-blowing. This has changed my life completely. And as we know, this word gospel means good news. And I believe from that moment on in my bedroom, good news is for sharing, and it's wrong to keep good news to ourselves. So I guess I was destined to be a passionate evangelist from that moment on. And I really was. I mean, I left school at the age of 16. I worked for Barclays Bank for 5 years. And, you know, we would go out clubbing and boozing and whatever. but I would come back on a Friday or Saturday night, and if I'd not led 5 people in the pub to Jesus or in a nightclub, I'd be really disappointed with myself. My life was so changed by hearing this message.
Were you the only, so no family context, no Christianity?
No one in the family at all. My dear old gran thought she was a believer, but we kind of got in an argument one day that because I wanted to get baptized. And she said, well, you shouldn't get baptized. You know, it was the ramblings of John the Baptist, nothing to do with Jesus. And I said, well, hang on a minute. John the Baptist baptized Jesus. No, he didn't. I said, well, yes, he did. No, he didn't. I got told off arguing with my dear old gran. So, yeah, to answer your question, I was a first generation Christian. I was the only one in my family.
And having been clipped over the ear when you told your dad, I mean, did he soften? Did they mellow?
Never. I mean, to this day, my parents are both in their early 80s. They still ask when I'm going to get a proper job.
Oh, wow. Is it painful?
Do you know, I think it probably was at the time, because I worked for the bank for 5 years. I was stewarding at Spring Harvest because I wanted to serve, but I didn't think I could do anything. I didn't think I had any gifts. I wanted to communicate, and I was very good at doing that one-to-one, but I didn't think I could do that to large crowds, which is, of course, what I do all the time these days. So that's hilarious, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I was stewarding at Spring Harvest. I was working for the bank, would take a week off, go down to Butlins and wear a yellow tabard and carry a walkie-talkie and say to people, you can't park there. But one night, you know, I was 21 years old. Someone was preaching, a preacher called Philip Mohabir. And he said, tonight, God is calling people to work full-time for me in the field of evangelism. And I felt a real nudge. So I put down my walkie-talkie and went to the front, and a couple of people prayed for me. And I knew from that moment on I was going to serve God in a full-time capacity. So, of course, I went home, still living at home with my parents, told them, went ballistic, all sorts of emotional blackmail for about a year. But I knew God had called me into full-time work. So it was painful. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But I don't really think about that much these days, but I knew I'd made the right decision.
And so you just quit Barclays Bank. Was it gradual? Was it sudden change?
No, it was I thought about it for about a year. I'd subsequently left the little Methodist church and found a church that was linked to a Pioneer, Gerald Coates' network of kind of house churches that had started in Bournemouth. And I was thinking of a YFC Youth for Christ year out team, but because we were in Pioneer, they really encouraged me to do a brand new initiative called TIE Teams, which stands for Training in Evangelism. Yeah,
is that Pete Gilbert? Was he?
Yeah, I worked with Pete. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, our year, there was about 20 of us, and it was the first proper year. The year before was kind of a sort of a soft launch with our mutual friend Steve Lee was on that, and James Sharp and great people like that. But 20 of us, we were trained, and I was seconded to work with a full-time evangelist. So I worked with this amazing character called Pete Gilbert. And I was into magic and comedy and all that sort of stuff. And Pete had been pioneering escapology as a form of communication. As sort of very, very passionate about sharing my faith, but always wanted to do it in a kind of a quirky, different way. So working with Pete was just a dream come true. And for a year, from 1988 to 89, we traveled 60,000 miles around the country, and I saw Pete in action, and he trained me up and kind of passed the mantle on a little bit in terms of creative communication.
Brilliant. I when I was at Loughborough University, he came and did our weekend away as a CU, and he sort of called me out and prophesied over me. So he left a mark on me as well. Special man.
Outstanding communicator. Pete is based in Scotland now. I just think back, if I hadn't have worked with Pete, I mean, who knows where I would be today.
Brilliant. Yeah. So give us some stories from that time, that TIE team.
Oh, it was just remarkable. So it was classroom training and then out in action on the streets. We went overseas. We had an amazing time out in Paris. And I really kind of grew as I sort of stepped out in faith on the streets, and we would draw massive crowds of people, because we were entertaining as well as preaching and doing it creatively. So I got into the escapology, or should I say got out of the escapology. You know what I'm trying to say. And I bought myself a straitjacket and some handcuffs, and it was just a wonderful visual parable of how things in our lives tie us up and stop us from being free, and how only Jesus can truly set us free. And escaping from a straitjacket, I have pictures in my office of gendarmes putting me into a straitjacket, and then I would escape. And just outstanding times on the streets. I love being on the streets telling people about faith.
Yeah, you remember you mentioned Steve Lee, and I interviewed him about 4 months ago, and of course he did that as well, and he had a few sort of shocking failures to share. Have you got any glorious stories or glorious failures to share?
Do you know, I've always got out, really. I mean, one time I was with Pete when we were going over to Norway, actually, for a youth weekend. And I'd arranged the lift. Peter got the tickets. We turned up at Gatwick. Our lift drove off waving. We were waving back, and we couldn't find our flight on the boards. So I looked at the tickets, and it turned out we should have been at Heathrow, not Gatwick,
Oh, no.
which Pete neglected to mention. So we managed to get all over town to Heathrow. Plane was delayed until about 10 o'clock at night. So we were enjoying a couple of brandies on the plane and in the lounge. Because the youth event was at 6:30 in the evening, and we weren't going to get there till midnight. So we'd had a few drinks, got there, arrived in Norway midnight, and everyone was waiting for us.
Oh my goodness!
So that was an interesting gig. We sobered up pretty fast.
And got invited back or not?
We did, actually. Amazing country. Yeah, worked out in Bergen. Have you been there at all?
No, I haven't. No.
Yeah, wonderful place. Because my mum's Danish, so I am half Viking, which explains a lot.
Right. The magic stuff, did you major on that?
Yeah, I did. Because Pete was doing the escapology, and then a lot of people were kind of copying him, and then I kind of took it on, really. So just really wanting to be creative and a little bit different. And Paul Daniels had been a huge influence on my life. I remember as a kid in Bournemouth seeing him make an elephant disappear. He had an elephant in a field, and a tent went round this elephant, and the lovely Debbie McGee danced all the way round. Paul Daniels fired a gun, the tent dropped, and the elephant had gone. And I saw that as a kid, and I thought, this is incredible. Wouldn't that be a fabulous hobby, maybe even a job? And I went to Bournemouth Library one rainy Saturday afternoon and picked up a book on magic. So I was really into that. So the magic and the escapology, it kind of, it was a very natural thing for me to do. And, it's got me into places where I would never have got if I was just preaching. I mean, so much telly I've done over the years, on mainstream shows. You're an escapologist with a difference. I worked with Jonathan Ross and Gloria Gaynor and Disney, and I went on the Big Breakfast with Cheggers and Zoe Ball, getting out of a straitjacket, and it opened up so many doors. And sometimes people come up and say, well, isn't it just a gimmick? And I say, well, of course it is, but it works really well. Yeah. And gets me places I would never go with a big black Bible and a folk guitar singing Kumbaya and Lord of the Dance.
That's right, yeah. Oh, brilliant. I one of the weirdest weeks of my life was I did I think it was called England's Christian Magicians course.
Oh my word, yes.
And anyway, it was a week with a bunch of really nice nut jobs, and but my conclusion coming out of that time was it is a real craft, and I think I just wanted some easy tricks, and of course there are some easy tricks, but it's a real skill to be a quality musician, isn't it? Magician.
Well, it is. It's just straight. It's stagecraft. It's just everything's happened over the years. I just got literally back this morning. I left at 8:30, 5 hours back from Runcorn, where I was entertaining last night, and people are so kind, and things happen in the act, and someone wanders onto stage, or you choose someone, something happens, and you're just ready for it. And people often joke that your ad libs are the most rehearsed thing that you do, because all these things have happened over the years, and you sort of remember them. So yeah, I really want to entertain people and do it really, really well as well, and get people laughing but thinking as well.
Yeah. And I know you're so versatile, because the first time I think we met, or the first time I remember you, and we've come across each other sort of every year at New Wines and stuff like that. I remember back at Detling, Eric Dell's Detling, and you were doing, I think it could have been the 9 and 10-year-olds with our mutual friend Nick Mitchell, and I sat. Oh
yeah, the 8 to 11s. We had a phenomenal time.
I sat in the back and there's sort of like an adult bunch of groupies listening, because you were sort of pitching it to the kids with this sort of not crude double entendres, but it was like there was a different level going on of humor, and it was so funny, and the kids were absolutely loving it. So
I grew up probably like you, watching Swap Shop and Saturday Superstore and stuff like that. It's very different Saturday morning TV these days. It's all blingy cookery, isn't it?
Yeah.
everything we want to do, put on high quality stuff, and when we work with kids or families at things like Spring Harvest and New Wine, really high quality stuff that is really entertaining, but thought provoking as well, that the kids are enjoying. And at another level, we're reaching out to the adults as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've had it. Like, there's nothing brings me more joy than when some 24-year-old, comes up to me at some event and says, "I heard you when I was 11, and that changed my life." I mean, I'm sure you've got loads of those stories as well.
Oh, do you know what's wonderful? We moved just before lockdown, churches, to a wonderful Anglican church around the corner in Littlehampton, Sussex, which is where I've been based now for 30 years. And the vicar, Tom, who I've got to know, is 37. And it transpires that 27 years ago, when he was 10, I was his leader at Spring Harvest on the week that he became a Christian.
Beautiful.
And isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It makes me feel old, but it makes me feel very blessed and encouraged as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you've also had the chance to go and minister abroad. Give us some stories there.
Do you know what? One of the quirkiest, craziest ones that makes no sense was some trips to Mexico City. And we always used to go over Halloween, and they had this big festival, the Day of the Dead. Yeah. If you watch, I think, is it Spectre, the opening title sequence for the James Bond movie? It kind of gives you a bit of an idea of the Day of the Dead and people walking around dressed in black robes and skeletons and floats and all this sort of stuff. And there was a great big celebration in one of the parks outside Mexico City one day. And there must have been about 2,000 people there celebrating. And there were coffins on the stage and really weird stuff. And being very brave, I sent my translator up to ask if I could perform. And would you believe it? They said yes. And I was still doing Escapology then. So I went on and did a 20-minute set and got out of a straitjacket and said, "Who wants to meet the Lord of Life on the Day of the Dead? Who wants to be set free from darkness?" and all this sort of stuff, really playing on the analogies. Yeah. Would you believe it, Simon? 300 people came to the front and became Christians at this really bizarre sort of occult type event. Yeah. And it was such a success and it went down so well, they invited me back the following year. And I was on the posters.
Brilliant.
I mean, how crazy is that?
Classic. Oh, wonderful.
An evangelist at an occult festival. You'd have thought the committee might have thought about this, that I might put them out of business, but there we go. What an amazing opportunity that was.
Now, I'm guessing you're married, you're on the road, you got how many kids by this stage?
Well, now I've got 5 daughters, believe it or not. 5 daughters, 18, 19, 20, 22 and 25. Strange names, I know, but there we go. We are a blended family, Simon. I was married with my 3 girls and my missus went off with someone else, and I was a single dad for 5 years, which was really tough. It was really hard, got no support whatsoever. It's funny, in some of our churches, and at the time I was in a very trendy house church in Littlehampton with hundreds and hundreds of people, but no one sort of looked out for me. They really struggled that I was a bloke who was on his own. And because I was quite capable and I wasn't an alcoholic and I wasn't terribly depressed, I was sort of left to it. And I think over the course of 5 years, I was probably invited out 5 times to have dinner with people, and people looked out for me. I mean, talk about ironic. The one time I was low, I spoke to my house group leader, Paul, and we arranged a night out, a boys' night out, him and me, a few beers and a curry. And I was so looking forward to it. And the day before, he phoned up and said, "Listen, I'm really sorry, mate. I've got to cancel because we've got a meeting of all the house group leaders on people we need to care about. We're going to be discussing who we need to care about." And I thought, oh man, how ironic is this? An opportunity to care for someone. Yeah. Yet it's easier to go and sit in a circle and discuss how we're going to care for people instead of actually doing it.
Let me just say right there, because I've just got back from a weekend. I've been preaching 6 times this last weekend, and I stayed with someone, and they always have someone for lunch. And we're relatively new kids in town where we are here in Bath. And we've been here 2 years, and I can count on less than one hand, I think maybe a couple of digits, who's invited us over for Sunday lunch. And it's such an opportunity. And I was witnessing there yesterday how these guys invited another bunch of people around. It's, people who are singles, divorced, whatever, people who are lonely and need to be looked out for. And anyone listening, you can do that. You can invite people around, get them around, foster community, and it's such a crying need, isn't it, for so many?
Do you know what? It's so important, and I do it all the time, and I always try to, I'm very busy on the road, but I always try to be around for Sunday lunch, and Sunday lunch is my domain, and I've got to say it's pretty darn good, raised with all the trimmings. And I mean, to be honest with you, my roast potatoes are the talk of the town.
Great.
And further afield, but I always cater for 8 or 10 people, and it's a joy to do it, and it really is. And we have a little group of friends, and I set up a little thing called Cheeky Sundays. And pre-pandemic, we'd have 14 people over on the Sunday night, and we'd drink wine and eat cheese and crackers, and we'd laugh, and we'd cry sometimes, and sometimes we'd pray, and sometimes we'd talk about the Lord, and other times we'd talk about football. But it was just wonderful times, and it's so easy to do. But it's very interesting, even within our group of friends, there's only one other couple who ever invites other people over. I tend to be the catalyst. So, and with one couple, they're terrible cooks. And I said, we haven't got to cook anything. We get a takeaway and put a $5 in each. Or, I love beans on toast or jacket potatoes. You don't have to be Egon Ronay or Fanny Craddock or Delia Smith. You can get something in, and a baked potato or beans on toast done with love is a lovely thing to do. So anyone can be hospitable.
And
it means so much, opening up your home to people.
I think of my mate Justin. He's a very good mate and a trustee, and he would just get everyone to pool, and this might be too much, and for many people put in a tenner, and he just had 30 mates over for a really quality steak. But you could do that for £3, couldn't you? Doesn't it? It's not.
Of course you could.
It's just open.
Well, I think years ago we all put a $5 in, 20 of us, and we got every dish on the Indian takeaway. Laid out on a great big decorating table. There was me panicking all night. It was going to collapse under the weight of all these dishes. But it was just such a great night. There was hardly any washing up. It was blimmin' brilliant. We've had 5th of November go by. We are known in our street for putting an event on called Bangers and Bangers. So I get some amazing sausages, bangers, and I get some amazing fireworks, which are also bangers.
Great.
We have people tweeting that our display is better than Little Hampton Council event. It was the quality of the fireworks, which I do get sent. I don't have to pay for them because of this men's magazine Sorted that I'm sure we'll chat about that I started. So I get some lovely freebies. But Bangers and Bangers, it's such an easy thing to do. And the people on our street all come out, and you meet people you've never met before.
Right.
And there's amazing people out there, lovely people who are friends and neighbours.
So I'd love it, even out of this podcast, if there'll be a few dozen, sort of satellite Bangers and Bangers initiatives kicking out around the country in different countries. Come on.
It's a good name, isn't it?
Yeah. Hey folks, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. I'm loving the response we're getting from across the world. It's just wonderful to see how encouraging and inspiring it is being and hitting the spot. Listen, if you are being blessed by it, I'd love it. Basically, this happens under the auspices of our ministry, Great Lakes Outreach, which works in the poorest and the hungriest country in the world, which is Burundi. We're having an incredible impact in the toughest of circumstances. We want to carry on supporting those local folks doing a great job. So if you wanted to, greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. You could make a donation there. I'd so appreciate it. Also, it's word of mouth, isn't it? So gossip these podcasts to other people, get them to subscribe, give us a great review. Absolutely wonderful. So grateful to you. So that's greatlakesoutreach.org/inspired. If you want to do a monthly, a couple of quid a month, or a one-off donation, we'd be incredibly grateful. All right, now let's get back to the podcast. So how many years did you spend in that sort of difficult, lonely state?
Do you know, I was about 5 years, and it was really tough. I mean, the first Christmas was really tough, as you can imagine, Christmas Day.
How old were the girls?
Maddie was 2, so probably 2, 5 and 8.
All right.
So really young. So it was tough, but I got them back on Boxing Day that first Christmas, and wanting to be a little bit different, I'd hired a snow machine. So when I picked them up and brought them back to my house on Boxing Day, our house was covered in snow. So that was a buzz. So it was a silly thing to do, but it created a memory. I work with families a lot and children, and speak about children and how to be a superhero to your dads. And there's a phrase that I use that I've used so many times. I think I came up with it, but it's probably too good for me. That children don't remember days, they remember moments. And I'm just very passionate about creating moments. And creating a moment doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You don't have to hire a snow machine. You can, wake them up on Christmas Day with a tea towel on your head, pretending to be one of the shepherds, singing, while shepherds wash their stocks by night. There's crazy things you can do. Sleeping downstairs isn't crazy, but it's a fun and a quirky thing to do. Putting up a tent in the back garden, having a movie festival with the kids, just creating these amazing moments for them.
And so the girls are sort of entering adulthood now. Are they all doing all right?
Yeah, well, So I met Becca, who's my wife now. We've now been married 13 years. So we met at Spring Harvest Holidays down in France. Have you been down to LPO?
No, I haven't yet. No.
Oh, it's amazing. Spring Harvest have got this 4-star camping site down in the Vendée, which is sort of halfway down in France. So I went over there with Care for the Family, put on an amazing week for single parent families. So me and this bloke Alan went with about 30 women and all these kids, and we had a whale of a time, as you can imagine. But I met Becca, who was there with her mum, not on the single parent holidays, even though she was a single mum.
All right. And
I met her, and our eyes met across a crowded swimming pool. And then she came to the pub quiz on the last night, and I bought her a drink, and she joined our team because I'm really into pub quizzes. And we were chit-chatting, and she said, well, if you're ever near me, please visit me. And I said, where are you from? And she said, you'll never have heard of it. And I said, well, try me, because I've been most places once. And she said, Dursley in Gloucestershire. And I said, well, funny enough, I'm there in 2 weeks. And the rest is history. So we became great friends. And then sort of a year and a half later, we got married. And we had a honeymoon with all the kids came on because we planned a breakaway as 2 separate families. And then we decided, well, why don't we get married? So all our kids came on our first honeymoon. And then we won a second one, a proper honeymoon in Bermuda, which we won. Isn't that cool?
How did you win it?
It's a lot. It was basically a raffle.
Okay.
And it just got better and better because it was a voucher with a certain airline, and this airline went bust. So we got upgraded to BA. And because I got pals at BA, we got upgraded both ways. And it was just the blessing of God. It was beautiful.
Wonderful. Now you did something. You did something creative with a Christmas cartoon. Tell us about that.
Oh, do you know what? I love Christmas. I think about Christmas every day. I really do. I heard a story probably about 18, 19 years ago that's caused me more stress and grey hairs than probably anything else in my 33 years on the road. It was a story of a little boy who was 5 years old who heard the Christmas story for the first time at his primary school. And at the end of the day, he asked his teachers why Mary and Joseph had named their son after a swear word. And I heard this story, and I don't even know if it's true. It could be an urban myth, but I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So I looked into this a little bit and discovered in the UK, 11.8 million kids, but only 756,000 of them go to church on a Sunday. And we're talking 18, 19 years ago, so it's even less these days. And I've always enjoyed Christmas. And, I've noticed every year Jesus gets a little bit more pushed out at Christmas. And as Christians, we often complain about such things, but don't do anything positive. So I thought, right, I'm going to do something positive. So I came up with this kind of campaign called It's a Boy, a fresh way of telling people about Jesus at Christmas. And it started life as a little invite. It almost looked like a birth announcement, and I was encouraging people to put them in their Christmas cards. And, if you get junk mail through the post with a reply paid envelope or a free post envelope, pop one in there, put it back in the post, but someone's going to open it and you never really know. And that grew into a musical and to a nativity play that schools bought. But I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to reach them all with a cartoon, an amazing kids cartoon with a load of celebs doing the voices? So I found a Christian animator who was outstanding. His work was beautiful, and he'd worked for Disney and Nick Parker Aardman Animations. He said, I can help you with that. And I said, what's it going to cost? He said, well, 20 grand, and it'll take me 3 months. And to be honest with you, Simon, I probably didn't have £20 spare, but I've always believed that finance follows faith. In everything I've done over the years. I've never had a salary. I do charge for gigs, but if people can't afford it, I come for less and trust God. But finance follows faith is one of my mantras. And I thought, I've got the faith to believe I could raise 20 grand. And would you believe it? In the end, it took three years and cost $250,000. But I'm really glad he didn't tell me that in the first place, because I don't think I'd have had the faith to believe for that. And I chatted up some of my mates in the world of show business. Some were more famous than others. people like Joe Pasquale plays the innkeeper, and Joe isn't a believer, but he's a friend of mine. And I said, Joe, I really believe if you do this, I said, this is going to sound really freaky, pal. I said, but I believe God is going to bless your career. And we were laughing about that because he thought that was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then he went on to I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and won, and his profile went through the roof. So I phoned him up. I said, I told you so. And friends like Cannon and Ball, the comedians, David Oyelowo was a young actor who is now a Golden Globe nominated world famous actor. He came along to our little studio, and I couldn't believe it. I was directing him. He delivered a line, and I said, David, that's good, but I'd rather it was delivered like this. And I can't believe I was directing him, a Golden Globe nominated actor, when we made this cartoon. And I thought, right, I want to launch this somewhere really cool. And I thought, I don't want it to be in the church, because all my heart is to touch people outside the church. So I phoned up the manager at the Odeon Cinema in Leicester Square, where they do all the big launches and premieres, thinking he would laugh at me. And he said, oh, yeah, fabulous. You can have it on a Sunday afternoon, 27th of November. And it was just one of the most remarkable days of my life. The world's press were there. We had to get crash barriers in. We had celebs coming, some of the people who were in it. I was having celebrity agencies phoning me up saying, so-and-so from Big Brother would love to come along. Can we send Kate Lawler? We've got this new boy band. Can we send this boy band along? And it was just phenomenal. So we did this. And then the following day, the real heart behind it, I sent a DVD to every single primary school in the United Kingdom, 25,199. Wow. I know that figure because I had to pay for the postage and the jiffy bags as well as everything else. But a potential audience of nearly 6 million kids, and that was 16 years ago. And as I said earlier in our chat, we're still hear from teachers and kids, for that matter, who saw it at school. And it's fun and it's entertaining. And you can imagine with Cannon and Ball in it and Joe Pasquale, it's a lot of laughs, but it communicates the true meaning of Christmas. And it's a really exciting little project. So good. Oh, and would you believe it? Over the years, it's been translated into 4 different languages. No one's ever asked for permission or sent any money. They've just gone and done it. So part of me thinks, blinking cheek, and someone's put it, free on YouTube, which I'm trying to take down because we are wanting people to buy it to plough into the next project. So it's been translated into Kyrgyz, and I've worked in Kyrgyzstan many years ago, and there's not many Christians there. And it's gone all over Kyrgyzstan, and you think, wow, this is incredible. Fantastic. So I'm not really cross. It's just nice to ask. Yeah. And a worker, well, you need to pay your own bills, don't you? Well, you see, we wrote the screenplay for the next one in the project, King of the Hill, the Easter story. But of course, once again, it's going to cost $250,000. So is that in the pipeline? It's written. I don't think I've got the effort and the energy to raise that money right now unless I get a big nudge from God. But it's a great way of communicating cartoons. Yeah. Well, Father God, right now, if someone's listening, you can do it. You're in the cat on 1,000 hills. If right now anyone's listening and has got some megabucks, would they be touched? Amen. Yeah. Amen. Because he can do everything, can't he? And totally. And I've seen it time and time again, but it took so much out of me, this Christmas one. So it's on the back burner. So yeah, that's made me think about it again. Yeah. So may this King of the Hill, the next big project, may that come off. Have you got any, you say you live by faith. Have you been absolutely taken to the wire? I'm sure you have. Many times with It's a Boy. I mean, oh man. Because all these stories that we talk about sometimes sound so sexy. We raised $250,000, but when you're there having to pay people and the money's not coming through and it comes in at the 11th hour, it isn't sexy at all, is it, Simon? No. It gives us grey hairs. Yeah. But I've been incredibly blessed over the years, by it. People, as you say, not always, really wealthy people. The final gift for It's a Boy, which took us, we were about 50 grand short. And a few years ago, my friend Ishmael phoned me up saying, listen, mate, someone wants me to go to Aberdeen to do a gig. And that's 540 miles from here on the south coast. I don't fancy it. You up for it? And I said, yeah, I'll do it. I was free and I thought it'd be a nice road trip. So I went and did this gig, got paid a few £100, kept in contact with the organizer, drove home, stayed in contact. And then these people turned out to be quite wealthy and started sowing into the work that I do, about £50 a month, which was wonderful. And then they moved to Bournemouth, and they said, look, if you're ever down this way, it would be great to host you. You're not free on this particular date. It's our daughter's 5th birthday. Would you come and do a kids magic show? And I said, well, I don't normally do that sort of thing, but I'd love to. And they said, well, how much do you want? And I said, well, don't be daft. You know, I don't charge friends. I'll come and do it. So when I did this little magic show, they were over the moon, and we were sitting there, and he made me a chicken sandwich, which I'll never forget because I almost choked on it. So he brought in this chicken sandwich, which I start biting into, and he says, listen, we've been thinking, why don't we give you 10,000 now and another 40,000 to finish the project in a week?
Brilliant.
So I start crying, choking on this blinking sandwich. He's having to do the Heimlich maneuver on me, but it's just phenomenal.
Oh, glorious.
So I've seen it,
Yeah.
and it's incredible.
Yeah.
But it is widow mite stuff as well. So the biggest gift for It's a Boy was 50 grand, and the smallest was a child emptied their piggy bank, gave me 20p. And I remember both of those vividly.
Yeah, yeah. So coming on to the current and a big chapter of your life. I mean, how long's Sorted been going?
Sorted 14 years.
Wow.
Once again, it was a story that stirred me into action. I was
Time
chatting
flies. Time flies. I mean,
I know.
I remember.
Isn't it incredible?
Yeah.
Oh, we're making big plans for our 15th birthday next November. Yeah, it was a conversation in the school playground with my accountant. And I always have to explain, we did both have kids at the school. We didn't just meet there to discuss my tax return. And we were in the school playground, and he was telling me how his 10-year-old son's mates were bringing lads mags into the playground, things like Nuts and Loaded and FHM, these sort of not top shelf porn mags, but sort of middle shelf, really unhelpful stuff, really objectifying women, unhelpful bits in there, really unhelpful content. And he said to me, wouldn't it be great if someone started something that was good and wholesome? You know, that could have people like Bear Grylls in it, could go into prisons and be newsagents. And I said, yeah, that is a good idea, actually. And as I walked home, I felt God nudge me, saying, well, why don't you start that? So I looked into it, and I knew Bear a little bit back then, and he wasn't as famous as he is now. And we lined up a lovely interview with Kaká, the Brazilian footballer. Yeah. And I got a quote from our printers, and it was going to be about £5,000 to produce this magazine. And I'd been invited to speak and perform at the Mandate, a big men's event, which used to be held in Northern Ireland, which I think is still there, but it's not as big as it was. And the one I was going to was at the Odyssey, 4,000 men. Erwin McManus was flying over from America to speak at it, and I was doing something as well. And I thought, yeah, that could tie in well. So we launched it there. Within a couple of weeks, a bloke called Martin, phoned me up and said, listen, pal, I want to send you £5,000. Will that be of any assistance? And the first one was paid for. And we've kind of rolled on ever since. And in one sense, it's a financial disaster. I pay myself £50 a week because that's all I can do. And I think I'd earn more having a paper round. But God has blessed that magazine, and it's gone all over the world. It's based in the UK, and we're very proud that it's British, and it is very British. It's written for a 35-year-old painter and decorator who doesn't go to church. So it's full of testimonies, though I don't like that word, because for people outside the church, it doesn't mean anything. So it's true life stories. It's jargon-free. There's no kumbaya or Bible bashy, but there's powerful stories of how Jesus has changed people's lives. Lots of celebrities. Bear Grylls is still involved all these years on. Great sport and lifestyle. But I send free copies into 76 prisons. Brilliant. And some prisons get hundreds of copies. I used to send 80 free copies into Belmarsh Prison in London. And that's a pretty high security prison. And the chaplain wrote to me saying, can you send more mags? Because scuffles are breaking out when Sorted arrives. Such is the demand for this Christian magazine. So good. So I send 120 copies into Belmarsh. We have copies available in Newsagent. It's the first Christian magazine to be available in WH Smith and McColl Newsagents. Over the years, if we've got the funds, we use secular companies, and we do what's known in the trade as monitored free distribution. So it's the kind of thing that if you pick up a copy of the Evening Standard or Metro in London at a tube or railway station, we get copies of Sorted there when we can. So we've done tube and railway stations. We do airport departure gates. So as you're stepping onto the plane and you see your free newspapers there and free magazines, we have copies of Sorted there. I've had 2 pilots over the years write to me who've come to Christ because they picked up a copy on the stand, or someone's left one on a plane. We give them away in high-end restaurants and hotels and places like that. During the London 2012 Olympics, there was an opportunity to give away 50,000 copies in all the athletes' villages, which we did. So, 33 years of evangelism, it's one of the most exciting things that I do. And you just hear of the gospel going to the ends of the earth. Yeah. I had a teacher from somewhere like Turkmenistan write to me saying, I use it to teach my pupils English. I said, how on earth did you get a copy out there? And he said, I bought one. There's a tobacconist downstairs under the English language school. And I thought, I know I don't supply there. So I reckon some rascal picked up a few free copies at Gatwick and thought, oh, yeah, I'll sell those. I'll make a few bucks on that. And it's sort of one of God's jokes, isn't it? That then he uses that magazine that someone's helped himself to, that's been resold, blinking cheek, so people learning English learn about Jesus as well as learn English.
Oh, wow.
Tremendously exciting.
It is so exciting, so inspiring. It's why I do this, why I've got you on. And from the very first podcast we launched about 6 months ago, literally that first podcast led to, I don't know if you know Ed Walker, Hope into Action, but it led to three houses, being sort of contributed to be bought and invested in for the homeless. So from the very first podcast, we've seen beautiful fruit, and I'm just trying to dream now for you. What could the fruit look like? I mean, would you want people to, say, I'm going to regularly sponsor 120 into Belmarsh? Is that the sort of thing you'd want?
I would love that. Do you know what? I've got someone who does that, someone who goes in there, which is amazing. But for someone to say, here's some dough, do what you like with it to reach people, because the opportunities are endless, which is for me as I'm an evangelist, I'm an entrepreneur, I dream big, I want to do everything with excellence. It's so frustrating that the opportunities are there and I can't always take them. We could print 1 million magazines and give those away all over the place. Yeah. That's very interesting. The only people who ever refused to take copies was Eurostar. And I thought, that's interesting. But anyone else, tube and railway stations, bars and restaurants, schools, colleges, universities, gyms, we've had free copies in gyms over the years. Uh-huh. If people could say, look, here's some money, use it wisely for free distribution, because it sounds very big-headed, Simon, I do apologise, but it's a cracking magazine. We always have big stars on the cover, and it doesn't put people off. And I love books, and I've written 17 books over the years, but you've got to be really into a book to pick it up and read it. But there's something about a magazine that there'll be something of interest in there. And we have such interesting people that we chat to. Yeah. And, as people flick through it, maybe for the cars and the gadgets, if you're not into church, but you start hearing some inspirational stories. I say to lots of mums, if you've got teenage sons who aren't believers, how about getting a subscription and putting a magazine on the coffee table or in the downstairs toilet? It's such an easy thing to do. It's really easy evangelism. Yeah. So I'm desperate to get more copies out there. At our peak, we were probably doing 62,000 every 2 months. With COVID and subscriptions dropping off and not being at events, not being able to get new subscribers, just only £36 a year to subscribe, But, that's dropped off a little bit. So we're only doing about 8,000 at the moment, which is still massive. But I'd much rather add a zero to that and do 80,000.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can push that in the right direction from this. Listen, anything else you want to sort of promote or share before we call it a day?
Not really. I'm just busy on the road, so value your prayers for that. It's been a tough 18, 19 months for all of us, not being able to go out and gig, and I've done stuff on Zoom, but it's not the same. I do a lot of comedy and humour and banter with people. I just love bantering with people. I've just come back from 3 gigs in the last 24 hours, and it's been wonderful being back on the road again. So I love going into churches and doing a comedy night that's good and wholesome, and I share bits of my story throughout, and to see people bring their friends and neighbours who aren't churchgoers and loving it and coming up at the end and shaking my hand and saying, oh, listen, mate, we weren't looking forward to that, but we really enjoyed that. And you didn't swear, you weren't rude, you didn't put people down. And that just warms my heart so much, because half the time with evangelism, it is smashing those misconceptions that Christians are all wallies who go to church 20 times on a Sunday, Sky Plus songs of praise, and help old ladies across the road, even if they don't want to go.
Oh, so if people want to get you for a gig, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Well, I've got a website, stevelegg.com. That's Legg, so that's 2 G, stevelegg.com. And Sorted is sorted, SORTED, mag.com, sortedmag.com. So Sorted is a wonderful gift throughout the year. £36 for a year, comes in the post every 2 months. And we say to people, once you've read it, pass it on. Leave it somewhere. Doctors, dentists, barbers, put it through a neighbour's door. Do it at midnight if you're really scared.
Listen, Steve, mate, it's been such a pleasure. Thanks so much for your time.
Ditto, pal.
And everybody, I hope you've been inspired. I've been inspired. So same time, same place next week. We'll have another fantastic guest. If you've enjoyed it, please give us a great review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this. If you want to be in touch with me, at simongilbert.com or any of the social media platforms. Thank you so much to Adam Thomas Steer for his editing and to Mike Sanderman for his mixing. And have a great week. See you next time. Toodaloo.